The winner is Oliver.
Welcome back to The Better Half. I'm Bradley J. Halverson, and here with me, she's my better half. It's Carly Corio. Hi, Carly.
Hi, Bradley. How are you doing?
How are you? Oh, I'm good.
Good.
You beat me to it this time.
I know. I wanted to do that today.
The reason why I'm so great is, our listeners heard episode 1, and they all collectively said, "Please, sir, can we have some more?"
Oh my God, have you been planning that joke?
Yeah. Yeah, for a while now. There might be a few more canned jokes.
I mean, it's nice because I did hear a lot of more from our fans, so it works.
Yeah, it's thrilling to have such a strong fan base right from the start.
And we know based on this movie, when you ask for more, you're given nothing but a good life, really.
Yeah, you're definitely not chased around the room, beaten and sold to someone else when you ask for more.
Yeah, foreshadowing.
You know what else I thought about, Carly? I thought it would be so nice to have like a short synopsis of this movie before we recap it. What do you think about that idea?
That's a really good idea that I had. Like, was that what you were playing into, or are you trying to make this seem like it was your idea?
No, this was me setting it up for you to be like, Brad, I have one.
Okay. Well, Brad, first of all, I had that idea, and Brad, I have one.
Oh my God, this is brand new information.
Yeah, good idea, Brad. Well, we're talking about Oliver Twist, directed by Carol Reed. Mr. Carol Reed.
Famously not a woman.
Right. The movie is called Oliver, winner of the 41st Academy Award Best Picture winner. And here's a short summary, Brad. And with these short summaries, my idea was to just do it like in a tweet. So, a summary of this movie is, after being sold to the mortician Sourberry, young orphan Oliver Twist runs away and meets a group of boys trained to be pickpockets by their elderly mentor Fagin in 1830s London, in this musical based on Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist.
Love.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Thank you. I don't know if it was 140 characters or less, but it was short and sweet.
Loved it and love you, Carly.
I love you back.
Thank you for that. And before we get into the recap, I want to go ahead and just get this out of the way and get ahead of it, because I know our listeners are going to find this out in my past anyways. But like, yes, I am gay, but no, I do not like musical and I do not like musical theater. It's just not been a genre that I jive with. I don't know. I haven't analyzed this too closely, but I just find that when I'm watching these things, or like and the music begins, I'm just waiting for the song to be over so that the plot of the movie can continue. And I'm not really like listening to the song itself to like glean new information. So I have been told both by other gay guys and even straight men that I'm a bad gay for not liking musicals.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And it's not to say I had not a fun time watching Oliver, of course, but you may find in the recap I may not be giving as much time and attention to what the song was. So we may rely on Carly here to sort of jump in. And if you want to touch upon anything, Carly, song-wise.
Totally. And I would say in my decade of knowing Bradley has not wavered from this opinion. It has always been this way. There has not been a musical other than one that I would say that we've seen together that Bradley wasn't like, oh, that actually was pretty good. I liked that. And I don't know if you're thinking the one I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
For sure.
It won Best Picture for a couple of seconds.
It was Best Picture for moments.
Yeah.
La La Land we're talking about. So Bradley did like La La Land, but other than that, no. Has never even looked twice at a musical, even if he hears it's a musical, regardless of what the storyline is, who's in it, what the songs are like. Bradley does not care.
Yeah. So I also think it's ironic, we talked about last episode, we established that I'm also not big on child actors either. So yeah, I just imagine my surprise that the podcast gods were like, all right, great, your next movie will be a movie musical with like a bunch of child actors.
Dancing children.
Yes. And it is a 2.5 hour long picture. So yeah, let's get into it. And we really have to start right away because like when I clicked play on this movie, we were greeted to a black screen, which is, I would say typical.
Yeah.
And we start to hear some music. And all of a sudden, maybe like 45 seconds later, we're like, wait, is something wrong? Like it still was just a black screen. And I had to pause it and move it forward only to realize like, no, this was intentional. It was an intentional 3.5 minute of just black screen with some orchestral music happening in the background. And because this happens again later at intermission, I now realize like, oh, this was clearly here for like the movie theater audience, basically to be like, grab your snacks, get your asses back to your seats, like the movie's starting.
Yeah. And a lot of times I was thinking as well, and I know you don't probably go to many musicals, and I wouldn't say I've been to a ton of Broadway stage musicals, but it usually does open with like the orchestra, the pit, playing a song. Yeah. So it did. It gave off a very theatery vibe because of that, which I did not pick up on during the 3.5 minutes we sat there and looked at a black screen.
Same, yeah. And I think that this is like helpful for our listeners as well. Like this is a movie adaptation of the musical Oliver, which is itself an adaptation of Charles Dickens. So we can't say like how closely, and also say Carly and I are not super familiar with like the original source material of, Oliver Twist. So we don't know what kind of liberties necessarily this, like the musical takes, and then therefore the movie takes in adapting the musical itself. So
I did do some digging into Oliver Twist, the Dickens version. Oh. So we'll get to that in our fun post review. But so there were some interesting changes that were made, probably necessary for it to be released to the public, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay. Yeah, so when we get started, just for some context, this kind of gets revealed over the course of the movie, but we don't see this happen on screen. But, Oliver's mother, she gives birth to him and like gives him off to this workplace and he like immediately dies. She's like, gone. And apparently like 50 other boy moms also did the exact same thing because really, we get introduced to this like dusty, crusty, musty place where there's like a small militia of like young boys who work in this factory type setting. And they all have uniforms on. It's all like
rags.
Gross and dirty.
Yep.
Yeah. Clearly the boys weren't taught to like learn how to clean or anything like that because this whole place is like drab and dreary. And all these boys are running around the cafeteria singing like It's a Hard Knock Life.
No, not Hard Knock Life. Wrong one. Although I'm pretty sure Annie is just the female version of Oliver, but we can get to that later. But no, The Food Glorious Food, which is a song I think most people are familiar with, is what they sing at the start.
Interesting. Yeah, they're all singing about food, which apparently is like a great resource here.
And everywhere.
And we do see the boys are served gruel, which I can only kind of describe as like Big Brother slop and vomit having a baby together.
I was thinking Big Brother slop, Brad. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And this whole place is ran by a very flamboyant man named Mr. Bumble, who wears long cloak and carries with him everywhere this like long scepter. I mean, it's very queer coded. It's very much like a gay who has power. And him and the other employees at this place, they get the good food. They get like steamed vegetables. We get a couple of shots of like the meats. They're in this like tiny room off to the side of the cafeteria, just like chowing down while all the boys are like, gruel, woo, and singing about food. And for some reason, it's really not clear to me, but the boys have decided today, okay, we're going to like draw straws, and whoever kind of gets I believe it was the longest one, not even the shortest one, had to go up to Mr. Bumble and his like female companion.
Really quick though, I know we had talked about this when we were watching, but it kind of made us think about, because they didn't have straws that you drink through. They had like straw like that horses eat.
Yes.
And the one boy had like a handful of straw and they all picked a piece of straw and whoever drew the long straw had to do it. So I was like, was that the origination of drawing the short straw? Is back in the day before they had these deadly things called straws that we drink drinks through?
Yeah.
Did they used to do it with straw? So I don't know.
Oliver Twist was like published in like the 1830s. Like this is like an old ass story. So in my head, I'm like, I think it's completely feasible that Charles Dickens originated this.
Wow.
Was a trendsetter. So Oliver, not getting the short straw, but the long straw, he has to go up to Mr. Bumble and Corny. And this is probably the iconic sort of line scene that most people, when they hear Oliver Twist, and we've already referenced it once in this episode, he goes up to Mr. Bumble and he's like, please, sir, can I have some more? And Mr. Bumble takes a beat and then just screams.
What?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a very popular, I mean, when I heard we were watching Oliver, that's the only thing I knew about it, was this little scene. And little did I know what would happen in the first 5 minutes of, not of the film, because the first 5 minutes was a black screen, but of the actual shots of the film. It happened right away. And yeah, very iconic scene.
Yeah, and literally Oliver at this point is like chased around the entire cafeteria. Mr. Bumble is aflame with anger. And the boys like quickly turn on Oliver too. It's as if like this wasn't like a planned revolution. This was like completely like Oliver is their patsy. And so Oliver, who I should say is like I think an 8-year-old child, gets caught. And his punishment is he's now going to be sold. And I really thought this entire movie was going to take place at this factory. And like the boys were going to like rebel and it was going to be a full on revolution. But nope. I looked at you, Carly, and I was like, wow, I get being sold is not a great feeling. But like he got out of there by doing this.
Yeah.
And I still don't really understand it. If I think about it too deeply, it just doesn't make sense. Like, what was the point of him asking for more? Like, how does that benefit any of the other boys? Why today? Why now? So literally Mr. Bumble with his scepter is like parading down the streets of, it's not London, but it's somewhere outside of London. And just, basically, boy for sale, boy for sale.
Literally yelling that. Also, singing a song this whole time. One of the lyrics, Oliver, Oliver, never before has a boy ever wanted more. Like, all he asked for was one more scoop of some sludge. And this man cannot believe it.
Right. Straight to human trafficking.
Selling him for just 1,000 pennies, which I don't know how that, translates to 1830s England, but...
Yep, no idea. But Oliver is purchased by a man named Mr. Sowerberry, who is an undertaker. And so now Oliver already has a second job for his resume. And we cut to him like back on the street, sort of like leading a funeral procession down the cobblestone street. But this is short-lived because one of the other apprentices, Noah, I believe his name is teasing Oliver. And Oliver just loses his shit. Like literally just like beats the crap out of Noah.
Teasing him about his mom. Making straight mama jokes like, your mama didn't want you and blah, blah, blah. Your mama died right after she saw you. Like, really harsh.
Yeah, so Oliver, of course, responds with violence, which we applaud him for. And his punishment for doing this is they literally throw him into a coffin and they literally sit on top of it.
An 8-year-old boy.
Never forget that. He's 8 years old the entire movie, okay? But he's literally thrown into a coffin. They're sitting on top of it. They won't let him out. I think Mr. Bumble shows up again to be like, what's wrong with my merchandise, what I sold to you? And they're like, he sucks. This was a bad purchase. And so they take him out of the coffin to throw him in the cellar instead.
Go down.
So Oliver, I think at this point, sings a song about like how sad his life is or something like that. He's like, oh,
where is love?
Woe is me.
That's what it was called. Devastating.
That's right, the Black Eyed Peas.
I actually wrote devastating.
Love?
Like, I was emotionally triggered by this, and Brad just fast forwarded. Actually, this was when we noted, no, right? This is when we noted, like, who, like, this singer, and I think you were even like, wow, do we think that's really him singing? And I was like, no way. Like, I think before that, though, we had thought it all sounded okay. But then this it had a very, and I know he's 8, but it had a very young girl tone. And Bradley looked it up, and this young actor did not sing in any of it.
Nope. Yeah, Mark Lester, I believe, is the actor's name who plays Oliver. But it is not his voice. It is some little girl. I believe her name was Kathy Green. And yeah, Carly and I clocked that immediately. Yeah. I'm like, we've seen enough seasons of Glee to know whether they're actually singing live or not. Or if this was recorded in a studio.
Another famous musical where they do this too is High School Musical. It wasn't Zac Efron singing, it was Drew Seeley. So we, as musical fanatics, are never fooled by this. Mm-hmm. All the listeners will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly. I'm a part of this too.
Yeah, so. You would know.
So Oliver quickly realizes that like the bars on the window are like loose or whatever. He can get out basically. And he does. And he goes on a Lord of the Rings walking trek, I believe, for an entire week. And he heads to London. Quite unbelievable. He does like hop on the back of a food truck at some point, and it takes them, I think, the rest of the way. When a truck gets to London, he has fully hidden himself in like a keg of lettuces, and that's where he's been hiding out.
Oh yeah, yep, yeah. It was like you see a bunch of cabbages and then just Oliver's head.
Yeah,
and then wasn't it another? Then they did it with another vegetable or something, and yeah, it was basically showing all the places that he hid.
Yeah, and upon entering 1830s like London, he is immediately sort of found by another boy, and this is how we meet the Artful Dodger, or Dodger really as he's known, but he's clearly born and raised in London, knows his way around, and he's quick to sort of take Oliver under his wing, but not before we get a very long musical number for the entire city of London.
One of my favorites, I wrote song, underline, love. Loved it. Yeah, I mean, you're literally taken through the streets of London. You're shown every bit of, retail they have. You see pizza dough, you see, people with milk, you see people with all their retail they have. I in my notes, I equated it kind of to High School Musical, back in High School Musical, the basketball choreo, and just how they use all their baskets and all their vegetables, and it was just very good object choreography as well. At one point, all the kids outside were playing blades of grass between their thumbs and like blowing and making that sound, which I can remember doing as a kid, and I asked Brad, I said, "Oh my god, did you ever do that as a kid?" And Brad said, "No, I never went outside."
And I still haven't to this day.
To this day. So, I don't know. It was just a very good, I thought, like, introduction. I mean, I think in movies, you can show but not tell, and this was a very good way of introducing us to London, what goes on there, who's there, all of that. So I really enjoyed it. I would wonder how they do it in a stage, on a stage, if it's just, obviously they can't go anywhere, but just a lot of characters, a lot of cool things. Big fan. Yeah,
and I will even admit as well, I think I made a comment to you, Carly. I was like, the choreography was, it's impressive. Like, there's so many dancers. Like, I don't think they could have done it to this scale on a stage, of course. Like, I think this is one of the benefits of doing this as a movie. I just also think it's not very practical that the whole city, is singing and dancing.
Right. I think you also equated this kind of to La La Land, the opening scene, right? With the opening number when they're all in the streets of LA, and it's just kind of cool. And so you kind of equated it to that, the one musical I know you've seen.
I will say the songs in Oliver, there's only maybe one that's like super memorable to me, and we're about to get to it, I think. The others, I'm like, oh, these didn't really like stick in my head. But again, I'm not somebody who's necessarily like geared to sort of be excited by the soundtrack.
One of the lyrics in this song that they're singing, Artful Dodger, everyone in the streets is singing to Oliver. And some of the lyrics, consider yourself at home. You're one of the family. We've taken to you so strong. And you can just see Oliver being like, finally, I fit in and I'm welcome somewhere. And after this first half an hour of the movie where he's just thrown and not cared for anywhere, it's nice to see.
That's true. That is a good thematic point to bring up because, at this stage, like, Oliver's been through the ringer. It's like, step aside Saw franchise. Like, Oliver has truly been through it. And for at least one fleeting moment, you think like, oh, Oliver's found his place. He's made it to the big city. He's going to have a Sex and the City moment. He's going to hail a taxi. But instead, Dodger brings him to where he stays and introduces him to what I initially referred to as like the Lost Boys. Again, another kind of group of young boys, no little girls in this movie, I think, at all. And Oliver learns quickly that like Dodger and the rest of these boys, they are pickpocketers. They go around the streets of London, nabbing what they can from wealthy people. Good for them. And this, criminal organization of boys is ran by an adult man named Fagin. I believe this is where Fagin has his like musical number about pickpocketing. Yep. And he's like introducing to Oliver what his life could now be.
A very famous song. I feel like you've heard it. You've got to pick a pocket or two. They're basically like, you can stay here, but you've got to pick a pocket or two and make yourself, worth it.
Yeah, and Oliver really doesn't seem too against this. He's like, okay, yeah, sounds great, love it. And a few of the boys, or even Fagin, they definitely make references to another person that we have yet to see named Bill. We're led to believe that Bill is someone important. But Oliver doesn't keep us waiting for that answer for very long, because I believe that very night, Fagin kind of sneaks out, heads to like a local bar, this dive bar type of place, and meets Bill Sykes. And Bill, from the minute that you meet him with his like mutton chops and his very tall, dark features, like he just gives off big villain energy. You just get the sense like he's the big bad. And we also learn very quickly what the relationship is between Fagin and Bill. And really, like, Bill is an employee of Fagin's, and Bill specifically is in charge of like being a burglar. So he's not pickpocketing, he's like breaking into homes, grabbing these like prized possessions and giving them to Fagin as payment. And Fagin loves, some prized possessions. He's a hoarder too. So he's got all these little trinkets locked in a box. And we also get introduced to Bill's girlfriend, Nancy. Not really sure if she runs this bar, but she kind of walks around like she does, or she at least works there. And she wears this like long red dress the entire movie, so she really stands out. And I'll say, I'm just gonna say this now, like Nancy, a standout for me.
Huge.
She's really the only like prominent woman. I'm excited to get into more of Nancy, but immediately upon learning that she's like Bill's girlfriend, I was immediately intrigued by her. Like, what are her motivations? What does she care about? Like, what allows her, or like what motivates her to be in a relationship with Bill, who's clearly got a lot of red flags going on around him? And how much is she aware of Fagin and like the criminal side of things? And how much does I was immediately just sort of drawn in by her. And she seems very cheery, very, happy-go-lucky, doesn't seem to be burdened by life. And I think that's definitely the theme of Oliver, too, like with all these like drab and dreary places. Like, this is like a hard life for a lot of people. And I think Charles Dickens, this might be a theme through all of his works, but he really shows you sort of like the ugly side of life, really. And like living, certainly in London, but I think in a lot of places of showing people from lower class who are just doing what they can, relying on stealing in order to have a way of life. And for these boys, it works because there's a sense of community there. And you get the sense that none of them actually belong to any families here in London. They only have each other. So I think that is a powerful kind of connecting agent, and something I think Oliver himself is looking for.
Also in this pub scene, the big song that really is led by Nancy is titled "It's a Fine Life." And I think that kind of echoes what you were saying. And I think a lot of films use kind of like a community bar or saloon or, meeting place to show just kind of like what the town's vibe is and what the people value and their community and what it looks like. So I think that, like you were saying, along with the song, they're all very cheery and happy about their life, and they know it's just like a good life and it's what they have in their, they'll make it work.
Yeah.
I think it shows too that Nancy is, in a way, the energy and the optimism in some of these characters' life, because of that's how we're introduced to her.
And it might be the next day, maybe some time has passed and the movie wasn't really clear, but Oliver is going to go out on his first pickpocketing assignment. Like, I really don't understand what his onboarding or training looked like for this position, but Fagin is very quick to sort of send Oliver off with a couple of experienced boys, Dodger being one of them, to kind of show him the ropes, get out there, start earning your keep, basically. So Oliver and Dodger head out, and it's really Dodger. Dodger pickpockets this man, Mr. Brownlow, and kind of dashes off, but he leaves Oliver like standing there, and Brownlow like notices, turns around, and just sees Oliver standing there, and suddenly, very similar to the beginning of the film, Oliver has to start running for his life again from the authorities.
And the Artful Dodger did notice this and kind of tried to steer the angry mob chasing Oliver away from him, and I think you can tell he didn't like or intend Oliver to get in trouble, but I think he's also like, oh well. And that's when he was captured and thrown into prison.
Yeah, and Dodger quickly heads back to their hideout and like lets Fagin know, and we understand that Bill and Nancy are both there as well. So now we get a sense that like, oh, Nancy she's a part of this. Like, she's not necessarily out on the streets herself, but she knows what's going on. She consents to it and is okay with it, which I think is fine. Because again, like, why are we gonna blame her for what these men choose to do? They're very worried. They're very worried that Oliver, especially being so new, he's going to rat out the whole organization. So they make Nancy in particular head to the courthouse to make sure like he does not, I guess, testify or, spill the beans about. Yeah. And we cut to this courthouse, which like, it's so bizarre. You got a little 8-year-old Oliver there waiting for the judge. And this judge comes out, sits at his stand, but he kind of can like lift it up, like those old school desk that you would sit at as children where you can kind of lift up the lid and the storage was under it. The judge has something similar where he lifts it up and he just like guzzles alcohol behind. Just chugging along. It. And then he's like, all right. He's like, let's try this 8-year-old as an adult. He's like, why'd you do this?
Well, Oliver comes in and goes into like another cage, right? He's like behind bars, and they show Oliver, and this drunk judge is like, stand up, boy. And the lawyer is like, he is standing up. And so that just kind of starts. And I think then you kind of see just how bizarre everyone thinks it is.
Yeah. And I think they have to give him a stool to like stand on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They make him stand like on the bars so he could at least get his head over the top. Yes.
Yeah. And Nancy is in the audience, with her sunglasses and a scarf over her head. She's there incognito. And so Mr. Brownlow, the one who was pickpocketed, he's absolutely pissed. He wants to see this 8-year-old serve several life sentences for this. And there was another witness to the crime who stands up and he's like, no, actually, I saw the whole thing. It wasn't Oliver. It was this other little boy. Oliver is completely innocent, and the judge and everyone's like, "Oh, sounds good to me. Let him go. He's free."
The judge questions him a lot. Says like, "Where do you live? Who watches over you?" And Oliver doesn't say anything. Like he's completely silenced. You can tell he's being loyal to Fagin and his brethrens, and he doesn't have anything. So then, because he doesn't speak, everyone thinks he's just a liar and doesn't say anything. So the judge does sentence him to 3 years of hard labor. And then all of a sudden, he's like, 3 years hard labor. And then that's when this witness speaks up and is like, okay, wait, now I'm going to actually say something. And says, I saw 2 other boys do it. It wasn't this boy.
Yeah, so that is a good point because, from Nancy's perspective, he doesn't spill the beans. He's still in good with them. Brownlow apparently feels so bad about all of this that he's like, Oliver, let me take you to my home. You can stay with me. And this is where we head to intermission. Yep. So finally, when this 5-minute nothing burger ends and the movie starts up again, we see Oliver living with Mr. Brownlow. And, Mr. Brownlow, more like Mr. Brown loaded because he's rich and he lives in this very affluent neighborhood. Oliver finally has clean clothes. He's no longer a criminal and being tried as an adult. And he goes out to the balcony where we are privy to yet another large group musical number.
It was easily a 10-minute musical number. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say it was probably close to 10 minutes. It starts off with one woman in the middle of the street walking down saying, "Ripe, strawberries ripe." And she had strawberries. She was carrying it. And Oliver's like, what's going on? And then it continues to come out with every other kind of person selling everything. It's similar to the number in London, but these are very, you can tell they're more upscale. So they're bundles of beautiful strawberries and shoe shiners and things that are a little more of the affluent nature. Yeah, milk and these milkmaids with, the outfits and they're carrying it on their shoulders. It was just, again, a huge musical number. And also at the end, toward the end, all these people are selling stuff. And then at the same time, all of the men come out of their brownstones, basically, to go to work. And you can tell, again, you're just introduced to what this community is in comparison to the London that we saw.
I also got the vibe that this happened at the ass crack of dawn. That this is this is how they wake up every morning.
Everyone cheery as ever as well. Happy to be doing their jobs, happy to be living there. At the end, an actual marching band comes down the street. It was just it was a celebration that we're rich and we live here. And Oliver watches the whole thing.
Yep, loves it. And we cut back to, Fagin and Bill, they're still not happy. Even though Oliver hasn't spilled anything, they're very much concerned that Oliver is not back with them and that Oliver could say anything at any time. And they send Dodger out, I believe, to go basically track down where Oliver is, and Dodger is successful and lets him know. And then Bill and Fagin want Nancy to bring him back, and this is where we start to see Nancy start to be I don't know about this. He hasn't said anything and he seems to be in a nice place now. Let's just let him be. And
at which point Bill says, unless you better go get him. And it's go get him. That's what Nancy's I don't know. And Bill says, you have to go get him unless you want to feel my hand on your throat. And that is, I think, the first time we really see Bill. We never trusted Bill, but I think then we start to really fear Bill.
Yeah, and I believe Nancy has her own song of, why am I doing this? Why do I stay? Should I stay with Bill? Why do I do it?
No, I mean, it was because right before that conversation happens, Nancy's like, I don't think so. Bill's like, you're going. And then, again, they're in this clubhouse with Fagin and all the boys are watching. And the boys really trust and admire Nancy. And they really like her. They kind of look to her as a mother figure, a protector. And then we see Bill slap Nancy because she's talking back to him. And then that's when you cut to Nancy singing a song entitled He Needs Me. And yeah, like Brad said, I think it's very like, why do I do this? Why do I stay with him? Because he needs me. And I think you really get to look into her thought process behind it all.
Yeah, and I think like the casual movie viewer might look at someone like Nancy and do this sort of classic sort of like women hating of like, wow, I can't believe her. Why would she stay with him? But I think it's great that we get Nancy's perspective and that she is not just this like one-sided character, that there's like layers to her, and she's figuring these things out as the movie's going along. And I just found it to be a little bit more realistic than whether or not like she would have stood up in that moment after being slapped and just said like, I'm out, and, you know, played the hero. That I think the audience would be like, that's what she needs to be doing.
You said something at this point, kind of like what you're saying, which I really liked. You said, it's kind of like Wings, we want to stan her, but too much of her character is centered on winning this man's affection, you know?
Yeah.
And I think 2 times in a row, and I was thinking about this today, going through some notes, I was like, this is kind of another, like, strong female character. And I think as we watch these movies, I'll kind of track that and see, like, you know, because I feel like 2 movies in a row, we've had these strong female characters. This one definitely stronger than the last, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting, and you really begin to like and trust and root for Nancy at this point.
Yeah, and this will be a little bit of a spoiler from the Academy Award show itself. The actress who plays Nancy, not nominated, not recognized at all. So
wow.
She did have some stiff competition, you know, Barbara Streisand and Katharine Hepburn. But yeah, for being the most prominent, I think, and the most interesting character in the whole movie, she is not recognized for her performance. So Nancy does continue to follow Bill here, and her and Bill together track down Oliver. Oliver, in the meantime, he gets like an errand to run by Mr. Brownlow, like gives him some money, gives him an errand, and Oliver, you know, skips off, you know, in his happy-go-lucky way. But we linger on Mr. Brownlow, and there's somebody else there with him. I forget, like a friend or like a maid or something. Yeah. But he looks over at his wall, and the camera just zooms in quickly to this portrait of a woman who has a neck that is just way too long. Like, it's giving giraffe, and she looks bizarre. And this is now our second movie in a row where there is just a picture or a portrait of a woman that looks completely just unnatural in some way. And Mr. Brownlow is like, could it be? Could Oliver, the resemblance is uncanny.
Don't you see a likeness?
Yeah. It's giving like when your friend is like, oh, you know what? You like really look like this other person I know. And they turn the phone around and it's Shrek's cousin. And you're like, what the?
That's never something kind to say to anyone. I don't care who it is. This person will never like who you're comparing them to.
So Brownlow is now suspecting that his long lost missing niece, Emily, possibly could be Oliver's mother. But Oliver, he goes out to run his errand, and Nancy does kind of show up, and she kind of like puts her arm around his shoulder and kind of ushers him away from the public view. And her and Bill, they kidnap Oliver. They just take him right off the street and they bring him right back to Fagin. And he's basically kind of told, like, this is your place, you're staying here. And Bill in particular really starts to like latch on to Oliver. And for me, I'm not very clear on like what Bill's motivations are for the rest of the movie necessarily, because now that Oliver's back, they don't seem worried that he's going to say anything. But Bill won't let Oliver out of his sights. And this is when they go out on their little mission. And where, you know, Bill wants to bring Oliver to go burgle this house. And again, I don't really understand why. Oliver's already proven himself to be a pretty poor criminal. He's already was like caught and in jail. Like, is he really your best lieutenant? Or maybe this is a way to like incriminate Oliver even further, to say like, if you do say anything, now we have all this dirt on you. Like, you burgled these homes with me, possibly. Yeah,
because Bill and Oliver kind of get into it. Bill really doesn't trust him. Is like, you know, what did you tell Mr. Brownlow? Oliver's like, nothing. Right. And then they kind of start to get at it, and Oliver slaps Bill. And then that's when, you know, they run around the clubhouse, and Bill's trying to get Oliver, and then Nancy and Fagin protect Oliver. And I think then Bill's like, no, I'm the power here. Oliver, you're coming with me. And then that's when they go on this adventure. And I think he knows he needs a small person to get into this house he's been looking at.
Yeah, so the tides are really starting to turn against Bill here. Like, Fagin has a whole song now, I believe, of like, should I change my ways? And it goes on for way too long, and we don't get an answer yet on what Fagin will do. But we see him having, some second thoughts. We already know, like, Nancy is conflicted. And the boys also seem like they're not happy. Like, I think they also witnessed Nancy's slap from earlier. And it's clear that the boys, like, love Nancy, probably view her as a mother figure. And they did not care for Bill's act of violence either. Time's up, Bill. He's in trouble.
Yeah. You had said when we were watching, you said Bill has kind of cracked, and that's exactly what happened at this point. He went from Bill to Mad Bill.
So Bill takes Oliver to burgle this home. It ends poorly. The owners of the home, I think Oliver knocks over a vase or something cartoonish. Yeah. The owners wake up, and him and Oliver scram to get out of there quickly. And despite this failure, Bill just won't let Oliver go and is gonna keep him close. And he also, I should say, Bill has a dog. I forget the dog's name. Bullseye. And it does look like the target dog if it spent its whole life cage fighting, basically. And so he's using Bullseye to really keep a guard on Oliver, and they head, to Nancy's tavern, possibly. They go there because, of course, Bill, he wants to let loose. He wants to have some beers, as men are to do. And Oliver's in the corner being guarded by a dog, and Nancy is enough's enough. She leads the whole bar in a nice, jolly number. They're all dancing on tabletops, whatever. Bill's not partaking in it, doesn't care. And we find out very soon that this was a ruse by Nancy to kind of create a bunch of confusion so that she could sneak Oliver out of the bar. And she's almost successful in this endeavor, but Bullseye the dog does see them. He starts barking. Bill's like, oh, hell no. He gets up and starts giving chase. We're going to leave you there for a second and go back to Mr. Brownlow, because Mr. Brownlow still trying to crack the case of his long-lost missing niece, Emily. He invites Mr. Bumble and Corny, to his house to, ask more questions about Oliver. And they basically admit up front, they're like, oh, yeah, that's Oliver's mother. Yeah. That's your niece, Emily.
Yeah, we've known this forever.
We've known this the whole time. We have her pendant. We really like it. Mr. Brownlow's like, well, give me that bag and get out of my home, you scoundrels.
Yeah. He's mad. He's basically how could you not have looked into this before? Yeah, very angry.
And Nancy also, prior to saving Oliver, she pays Mr. Brownlow a visit and basically is like, I'm going to get Oliver back for you. I'm going to bring him to this bridge tonight. Be there to reclaim your prize.
Yep.
And so now we cut back to Bill Sykes and his dog chasing after Nancy and Oliver. Nancy gets him to the bridge and just has to go up the steps to, get onto the bridge. But this is where Bill and the dog catch them both. There's a big kerfuffle.
Nancy sends Oliver, says, run up to the top of the bridge.
Run.
Yep. And then the kerfuffle happens.
Yep. And we just see it happens off screen. Suddenly they're behind
a wall.
Behind a wall. Yeah. That's part of the bridge. And we just see Bill club Nancy to death. She dies. We at first were like, no, there's still a chance.
Yeah.
But no.
Nope.
This was a fatal wound.
Yep. Absolutely disturbing. Sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to keep giving Nancy her moment here and justice for Nancy, because again, she's the only prominent female character in this movie. And I have a feeling this might be a theme in a lot of the Best Picture winners, but she has this tragic end. She's just killed.
Yeah.
And this apparently is the final straw for Bullseye the dog, because he turns against Bill, goes and finds the authorities and leads the cops.
Bullseye has had it.
Yeah, Bullseye's like, I'm not being paid enough.
I did not sign up for this.
And Bullseye leads the authorities to where Nancy's body is. But at this point, Bill has booked it. He's caught up to Oliver. They kind of end up back at Fagin's lookout area. And Bill's like, I'm going to use Oliver now as a human shield. And we start to see that an 1830s mob is coming after Bill.
Torches, pitchforks.
Torches, yeah.
Yep. Continues to grow.
All the works.
Gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and all of I don't feel like we even really see Dodger or any of the boys. We get Fagin. He's really worried about his treasures, and the mob are all there, but the stairs leading up to Fagin's hideout, they crumble and break at this exact moment, so the mob can't get to Bill. The whole place is surrounded, and so Bill starts to climb out of a window.
Yeah, there was they come to this window, and then there's like this almost plank out the window. And remember, there was like this rope, and Bill's like, all right, Oliver, go get this rope and tie it to that. I think they wanted to like swing from it or something. And so he sends Oliver out to do that, and Oliver walks this plank with a rope in his hand, which is somehow fashioned as a noose. And, you know, it had a loop at the end of it, so you're scared, but that really doesn't matter. Yeah.
And meanwhile, like, Fagin, I don't even know how he gets out, but he, like, slips in some mud, and all of his, like, prized possessions go into the mud. And apparently it's really deep, because you just get all these close-up shots of all of his, like, all the jewels, all the necklaces, just, like,
and for some reason, Fagin cannot dig in the mud to get them back. They're gone. The mud has eaten them. He's devastated that this...
Devastated. Meanwhile, like, up above him, this little boy is, like, dangling above his death right now.
Yeah. And I guess Bill does use the rope then. I think Oliver hands it to Bill, and Bill does swing to the next building.
Yes. Yeah, so he prepares the rope. He uses it to swing over, which we thought the plank was going to break under the weight of 6'5" Bill, which was kind of hot, but he makes it across. Oliver's left dangling on this piece of wood. It does not break. He's just still kind of stuck up there. And that's when, like, the mob take their shot. This, like, random guy in the mob shoots Bill, and he dies. By Bill.
They kill Bill.
They kill Bill.
There you go. There it is.
Yeah, first Bill kills Nancy, and then
Bill kill, then kill Bill.
And somehow we just cut to, like, Oliver's safe. We don't even see him
they like
really get rescued. And before we end with Oliver, we do see one last shot of Brownlow. He's, like, singing a reprise of his, like, Am I Gonna Change song.
You mean Fagin.
Oh, what did I say?
You said Brownlow.
Oh, no, yeah. I do mean Fagin. He's, like, on the streets of London, you know, he's lamenting. He's like, I guess I will change my ways. But then Dodger shows up, and Dodger pickpocketed someone out of the mob. And was like, hey, Fagin, like, look at this. I did it again. And
look at this
Fagin's
huge
like,
wallet.
And we very much get the sense that Fagin will not give up his ways. And him and Dodger head off into the sunrise. And Oliver is rescued. And we end the movie with him living with Brownlow, who is, as we know, is his great uncle, confirmed. And he has the family. And he's going to get a nice inheritance because his family's rich. Happy ending for Oliver. Sad ending for Nancy.
And Bill. Rightfully so.
Whatever. And we can't confirm what happened to Bullseye the dog.
Oh my god, I was just wondering, why did we not find out what happens to Bullseye?
I assume someone in the mob.
I was going to say, the mob's probably still following him wherever he's going.
You know, the mob can't break up. They got to find a new thing to mob about.
That's what they do.
So that is Oliver.
Oliver.
With an exclamation point. And so, so now we want to touch down on, at least I want to touch down on some of the things that happened at the 41st Academy Awards, which is where Oliver really is the big winner of the night. They were nominated for 11 different things, and they end up winning 6. I'll say one of those 6 was an honorary Oscar given to a woman named Anna White, who was the choreographer of this movie.
Oh, wow.
There was no category for choreography, so... And they actually had the actor, Mark Lester, who plays Oliver. He's the one that gives her the award on stage.
Oh my gosh, cute. I wish I could see that clip.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sure you do. No, that's really cool. Because, I mean, I wrote many times and I said it. The choreography was great in the whole film. Mm-hmm. Whether it was on the streets or just in that little clubhouse. Like, they did so much and loved it. So, she deserves it. I assume it was a she. I can never know.
Yeah, I mean, the name is ONNA, but you're right. In this day and age where carols are men,
right?
Anna White could be a man. But yeah, they win Best Picture here. Some other things I noticed, again, the actor who plays Oliver, not nominated either. Mm-mm. Like, instead, Fagin, the actor who plays Fagin, is nominated in the lead sort of Best Actor category. And Dodger gets nominated for the male supporting actor. So for a movie, for the titular character, snubbed.
Nor was Bullseye the dog given any commendation.
Mm-hmm. Nope. And which, you know, if I think about it, it's like, sure, did Mark Lester have to do a lot of the heavy lifting playing Oliver? But he didn't even sing his own songs. I don't know. So maybe I do agree to some extent.
He was really cute, but I guess you don't win for that, or Leonardo DiCaprio would have won a lot more. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So they also, I don't know all the categories they win off the top of it, but I do know they win. Like Carol Reed does win for Best Director here. I know they're nominated for Best Costuming. I think they do win sort of like Best Music or Best Song. Certainly something in the song category. But a few other things that were noteworthy to me. This Academy Awards had no host, and that broke a tradition for about like 20 years or so. So they're not the only ones to not have a host, but they had no host at this one. There was a historic tie win for the Best Actress category. Both Barbra Streisand and Katharine Hepburn win Best Actress.
Do you know what... I know Barbara was for Funny Girl, correct?
Yeah.
Do you know what Katharine was for?
Yeah, a movie called The Lion in Winter, which was
Wow.
also nominated for Best Picture. So that was noteworthy. Stanley Kubrick, which is probably one of the more prolific film directors ever.
You love him.
Like 2001. I did take an entire undergraduate course on his films, and I watched them all. And I will not say I'm a stan, but I certainly love The Shining as a Stephen King fan. But it's 2001: A Space Odyssey that is nominated. Is not even nominated for Best Picture. And I just thought that was interesting because 2001: A Space Odyssey is definitely one of these movies that has permeated the zeitgeist and still kind of referenced in pop culture kind of media.
Yeah.
But it only wins, I think, for like Best Visual Effects here. And like Stanley Kubrick does not get the Best Director. That goes to Carol, of course. So I thought that was interesting. And I do want to touch on kind of the other movies nominated in the Best Picture category, our big losers, as I...
The other half. The lesser half.
And really, so Oliver wins against 4 other movies. And the only one I really have heard of, not that I've seen any of these, is Funny Girl, which I know is either Barbra Streisand's like breakout role or at least like a role that brought her like critical acclaim, and which I know is another musical. It's also directed by a guy, William Wyler, who we will be covering more in depth because he has directed, I believe, 3 Best Picture winners.
Wow.
So this is kind of an upset, I think, from Oliver. And again, I've not seen Funny Girl, so I can't speak to how great it is, but I feel like on paper, it's maybe could have won here.
Yeah.
And The Lion in Winter was also like, Oliver had the most nominations. The Lion in Winter had the second most nominations. Of course, has Katharine Hepburn in it, but they do not win. There's a movie called Rachel, which I don't know who Rachel is. I don't know anything about it. And then there's an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, which of course there is. There's like one every year. But this is not an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet I'm familiar with, nor have I feel like as a society we ever referenced like this particular Romeo and Juliet picture.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, and then lastly, the only other noteworthy thing I saw was the film that wins in the Best Documentary category gets taken away from them.
Why?
And it has to be offered to another movie. And it's because it came out in 1967 when this was supposed to be covering films in 1968.
I'm sorry, on a technicality? It was
on a technicality.
Unbelievable. But I mean, it's the Oscars' fault for allowing it to be a nominee, and then they're like, "Oh, we messed up, so we're taking it away." Wow.
Yeah, an intern got fired for sure from the Academy Awards.
The way you'd have to rip the statue from my cold, dead hands if I was part of that film. That's unbelievable.
So, Carly, really quickly before I turn it over to you to talk about our leading stars, I do just want to say a few things about Carol Reed. There wasn't anything super, super interesting, but some of the things I noted here was his nephew, Oliver Reed, was given a role in this movie. You might talk about it more.
Nepotism.
But, Oliver Reed is Bill Sykes, gets a big role.
Yeah.
So, and his name is Oliver, which is very confusing. Carol Reed, directed a lot of different movies and was involved. And there was one that he was slated to do, Mutiny on the Bounty, which is actually another Best Picture winner. I believe this was like an adaptation of it. But Carol started beefing with Marlon Brando. They did not get along. And it got to the point where Carol said, "I'm out. If Marlon's in, I'm out."
Wow.
And so he leaves the picture. We should also say Carol Reed is actually Sir Carol Reed. He was knighted. And lastly, he died 8 years after Oliver was released.
Oh my gosh. I wonder whose side I'm on, Marlon or Carol, Like, I don't know, a Nikki Cardi thing. Like, who are we siding with? I wish we could go back in time and see.
I would say history says Marlon wins. wins.
Because he dies? Oh, because we know of him.
Yeah. Because, we thought Carol was a woman, so
yeah, you're right.
I just feel like...
You're so right. Marlon wins.
Marlon won the beef.
Sorry, Carol.
But yeah, Carly, I would love to know what you discovered.
Yeah, I liked discovering for this one. First, I did a dive into the bigger notable actors and things.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you talked about Oliver Reed and plays Bill Sykes. Okay, yeah. So Oliver Reed, probably the biggest actor in this movie in terms of how big their career ended up being after Oliver. Acted forever. They're Oliver's biggest role, and I don't know if you've seen this movie, but it was a movie that I know is popular, Gladiator.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Have you seen it?
I actually have not seen Gladiator.
Okay,
yet.
it seemed like
But
something
I'm
you
going
would watch.
to.
Yeah, I was gonna say we will. So we will see Bill Sykes
We
again, which was exciting because we had talked last pod about what actors will we see again. But I don't
Sure.
want to get you too excited because actor Oliver Reed died during the filming of Gladiator.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so at one point, it was like during the filming, all the cast and crew and everybody went out for drinks one night, and Oliver Reed got in a fight with some people and had a heart attack during the fight and died. I know.
Oliver, dude.
I know. I maybe should have waited until our Gladiator episode, but it was too big, you know? And I will say Oliver Reed had a long time battle with alcoholism and drug addiction, so they attribute a lot of it to that as well. So Oliver Reed, big star, was in a lot of things. And then the next person I want to talk about is Jack Wilde, who played the Artful Dodger, the young kid.
Yes.
Like you said, also was nominated for an Oscar, which thinking back to the movie, I did really enjoy that role. I enjoyed what Jack did with it. I know as a child actor fan, unlike you, I did like what he did, who he was. I thought he was just very good at his role. He didn't act very much after Oliver. He was in some things here and there, but he didn't act a whole bunch. He also had a long battle with drugs and alcoholism, unfortunately, and he ended up dying kind of young from that.
Oh, wow.
I know, I'm sorry, my updates are kind of sad today, but... And you can...
We're like classic old people who just like go through, like, you're like, hey, grandma, and they're like, so-and-so's dead. And did you hear about so-and-so? They're also dead.
Right. Oh, and that person died. So maybe I'll leave out causes of death for future actors. Okay, so Ron Moody, who plays Fagin.
Yes.
I know you said he was nominated for Best Actor for this movie. I don't think he won the Oscar, but
no, he didn't.
He did win the Golden Globe for Best Actor for this. So that was kind of his biggest thing. We had talked about this, and I think Charles Dickens in general was later notably anti-Semitic. In a lot of his writings, he had portrayals of Jewish individuals that was not very kind or put them in a bad light and just generally anti-Semitic in nature. So Ron Moody, who was cast as Fagin, was very dedicated to make the Fagin character not portrayed as Charles Dickens would have wanted or did want. So he was very aware of the anti-Semitic nature of this character and did everything he could to change it, which I think he did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, so then really the only other person is Mark Lester, who plays Oliver Twist. Very interesting. I was like, have I seen him in anything? You probably have not. I don't know if you dove deep into... Yeah, so he was a child actor, could not sing. He was cast in this movie, Oliver, huge breakout star. Columbia Pictures went to his parents and was like, we want to have a long-time contract with this boy. He's a star. He's going to make it. And his parents said no. So
he was grounded.
He was basically grounded from Hollywood and couldn't do it. He was in maybe 10 to 12 more smaller film roles over the next 10 years, and then he decided himself, maybe his parents encouraged it, to retire at the age of 19 from acting.
Okay.
So he notably bought a Ferrari and traveled Europe for the next 18 months after retiring from his long 10-year career as an actor.
Yep, makes sense.
And then decided to settle in his new career as an osteopath. And his big he had a whole clinic, he had a whole office as an osteopathic doctor medicine, and he focused on acupuncture. So I don't know, that says a lot about where he went, what he's doing. But the biggest thing I want to talk about Mark Lester is when you Google Mark Lester, the big thing that comes up is Mark Lester Michael Jackson. I don't know if you saw this at all.
No.
Yes. So,
I'm very curious and afraid.
Because young boy Mark Lester, cute young boy Mark Lester.
Yes.
I guess Michael Jackson loved the movie Oliver. Loved it. Which I don't know why. The article I read didn't give details, but maybe he liked the soundtrack a lot. And
yeah.
So I guess Michael Jackson's what do you call it? Like the manager reaches out to Mark Lester and is like, "Hey, we'll be in your town in the next couple weeks. Michael Jackson loves you. Can you two meet up?" And I'm like, "Wait, what's the age gap of these two? Like how old, you know?" So I looked it up. Their birthdays are only like a month and a half apart. So Michael Jackson is a month and a half younger than Mark Lester. So they're, okay. So they're friends. It's not a weird relationship. Yeah. It was a friendship.
They're peers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So they continue to be best friends, like best friends. There's a lot of interviews with Mark Lester that he says he was my best friend. Mark Lester is the godfather of all of Michael Jackson's children.
What?
Some people, I did not know this, but Michael Jackson did not biologically father any of his children. So a lot of people believe, and Mark Lester has said that he did give sperm to Michael Jackson. But he says, I know other people did as well, so there's no confirmation if any of Michael Jackson's kids are Mark Lester's. There's a lot of Reddit things about this, and there's one kid, Paris Jackson. Everyone's convinced that Mark Lester is Paris Jackson's biological donor. So, I don't know. There's a really big hole to go down. I looked at Paris Jackson, does not look one bit like Oliver Twist, so I don't know if I buy it, but a lot of people are convinced. It's either everyone online says it's between Mark Lester and Michael Jackson's dermatologist. Those are the only two people that could have fathered Michael Jackson's children.
I was just thinking, I know exactly who to put on the case. It's Mr. Brownlow. Like, he knows exactly who Oliver looks like and doesn't look like.
Oh my god, yeah, we need to paint an oil painting of Paris Jackson, have Mr. Brownlow hang it in his house for years. Yeah, hang it in his house for years, but then one random day take a look at it and see what he thinks. You're so right. So yeah, that was a good deep dive for sure. Nancy, who was played by Shanae Wallace, mostly did voice work after Oliver. It was a big role for her. Did a lot of voice work in a lot of Broadway theater, which was cool. Okay. And this was a big thing I saw. I guess after Oliver, she moved to America and was offered a role on a TV show called The Brady Bunch.
I've heard of this.
I've heard of this show. Yeah, small role, but declined the role because she wanted to do more musicals. And I was looking at the time how old she was. Like, there's no way she was offered anything but the role of Carol Brady, I would think. Maybe, I don't know what your familiarity is with the Brady Bunch, but I grew up watching it a lot. So she maybe was Alice, the live-in, the maid that lived in their refrigerator. It could have been who she was playing. But I don't know.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that was a big note that I saw. But I wanted to touch on one more thing, which is I did look at the Wikipedia of the original Oliver Twist story written by Charles Dickens. Yeah. I read through the book summary, and it's pretty similar, very similar, but the ending was definitely changed a little bit. So here's some notes I made. You ready?
Okay.
So there's another character in the book, the original version of this story, another character named Monks, who is always in...
Who?
Like, Tony Shalhoub, Monk, but like multiple monks. And this character is kind of following Oliver, always wanting to is in this London and befriends Fagin and befriends Bill Sikes throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. And you can always tell he's just kind of wanting to be in this world. And then you learn later that Monks is Oliver's half-brother. Yeah.
Another family twist reveal.
And so at the end of the film, when Oliver does end up living with Mr. B, Mr. Brownlow, and Monks goes and is like, hey, Oliver, just so you know, I too was mothered by this lady in this painting. And Oliver's like, what? What? And Mr. Brownlow's like, okay, listen, Oliver, why don't you give half of your money to Monks? It's only right. And so in the story by Charles Dickens, Oliver gives him half of his inheritance, to which Monks says, thank you very much, moves to America. I don't know how long the book goes on, but moves to America and later dies in prison in America.
Oh my god.
I know. So it's like a big part of the film that was left out. I'm kind of thankful it was left out because I think it was unnecessary. But the only other thing that was left out, and again, I think they had to change this to make it viewable by the public, was at the end of the movie, and maybe this is why they made that rope shaped kind of like a noose, is at the end of the movie, Bill Sikes walks out with Oliver with this rope in his hand and slips and hangs himself.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how Bill dies in the story.
Huh.
I know.
I can definitely see how that might be. And this was kind of my experience with watching Oliver. The story is very dark to me.
Yeah.
Like I get the sense, but it's weird to kind of slap on this like musical happy-go-lucky optimism sort of tone on top of this like dark story, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that somebody read this and was like, this would make a great musical. Like, you know, I don't know. Because I'm like, that ending doesn't surprise me too much. And it's not too surprising that the movie decides to just shoot Bill instead.
Yeah, you're so right.
Versus like having to see his like hanging body. I think I do agree with there.
Yeah.
Or agree with that change. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a very interesting read. Because I wanted to see when the first musical adaptation was. I didn't know if the first musical adaptation was on the stage or on the screen. And it was on the screen. This was the first musical adaptation.
Oh.
Yeah, one of the nominations it was for was what they still have the award. It's like what's it called? When you like adapt it to a screenplay.
Right, like it's either the best original screenplay or like best adapted screenplay.
Yeah.
I know they have.
Yep, exactly. So I think it was nominated for something like that. But yeah.
Okay.
So that was interesting, and those were all the little tidbits I found.
Well, before we get into our ratings and our rankings, where we can really sort of discuss whether we liked or didn't like Oliver, or where we ultimately land, first we need to ask, who is this for?
What is this for?
So this is the part of the episode where, you know, I'm going to answer whether or not Oliver's for the gays, or Carly's going to answer whether or not it's for the girlies. And going first... Look, okay, I get that it's a musical. Okay.
Is it for the gays or is it for Brad? How are you approaching this?
The exercises. I'm speaking on behalf of my people, and unfortunately, I only know like my lived-in experiences and my relationship to the material. I mean, it's like there are definitely some like queer-coded characters for me. Like Mr. Bumble reads queer to me. Oliver Twist himself. He's gay. I'm sorry. Like, it's not canon. It's not established. But that little boy is definitely gay.
You think? Wow.
Yeah. And with his singing voice, I mean,
I was going to say, is it only because his singing voice is an actual woman? No, I mean, I trust you. I don't want to question it too much, but that's an interesting perspective.
His hair was a little too perfectly coiffed. Like, it just was a little too perfect, especially for being in, like, grungy warehouses and grungy streets of London.
Yeah, he obviously had
perfect.
priorities that centered around his looks.
So, my instinct, my heart of hearts, despite all of that, I would say Oliver is not for the gays. I don't think so. I don't think that every musical inherently is for the gays. I just don't. There are definitely a great many. Mm-hmm. For instance, recently we just had part 1 of Wicked, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's for the gays. It's colorful. There's a lot of memorable standout characters. A lot of strong female representation, which I think is important.
Ariana Grande's in it.
Yeah, exactly. Ladies,
I mean,
it's a Fritz Bernays. So I just don't think Oliver, especially given how Nancy's treated, and there's just not enough for the gays to kind of snap their fingers to. So I'm gonna say it's not for the gays.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that thought. In terms of, is it for the girlies? Absolutely. I think absolutely. I loved it. I loved it. I thought the music, the choreography, and again, not all girls, people in general are going to be musical fans. So it might not be for you, but as someone who grew up really enjoying musicals, I had a cultural awakening from the movie High School Musical 1 and 2. I think being a fan of musicals, I really liked it. I liked the story. I liked that there was some violence. It wasn't all just like happy-go-lucky musical. It was a true like stage tragedy because there was,
Mm-hmm.
So I liked it. I think it's something you can sing to, enjoy. You root for the little kids. You have Nancy, this strong, powerful woman who says no and then gets killed. And I do. I think I really enjoyed it, and I think the girlies, as a general idea, would enjoy it.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I cannot speak for the girls. I
yeah.
can't.
No, I mean, it's interesting. I think we both are surprised by each other's rating here, you know?
You did pose an interesting question in my answering for me. And, I imagine how we answered this question will reflect in ultimately how we kind of rate and rank and just, what's our relationship to material in general. And so for our rating system, we're going to choose a unique emoji for each film to kind of give it a 1 out of 5, no halfsies. And we decided on the top hat. We felt it was very Charles Dickensian to do the top hat. And I'll go first. I'll be brave. I'll go first. And I did think about this a lot because I am a thinker and I'm a processor. And I ultimately have decided to land on 2 top hat out of 5.
Okay. Below average. Okay.
Yes. If you got to put math to it, I guess. Miss Mathematician.
You're like, I'm a thinker, I'm a processor. And then you're like, okay, if you want to put math to it.
If you want to put logic
right.
to it, like, golly. I think for me, it's not that I don't recognize that this is a great film, because I had a hard time sort of like, am I rating this in terms of whether or not the film itself is a good movie, or is it more about like my relationship to the movie? How strong is it? How much do I enjoy watching it versus do I have any desire to watch it again? I thought about all these different factors. And I think for me, when we watched it, this 2.5 hours felt a little long to me. And of course, the movie was padded out with some of the intermission in the beginning where there was just nothing happening on screen. And yes, we did skip through that. But I feel like as we got into Act 2 in particular, I know at one point, Carly, I looked to you and I was like, what is the plot of the movie? Like, where are we? What could be like the climax of this movie? Where are we heading? And every time, characters would stop down to sing again, I just was like, can we get to it? Like, I just found myself impatient to find out sort of like, how does a story like Oliver end? Because again, I mentioned this once, but I really thought the whole movie was going to take place at Mr. Bumble's place. Like, I thought, like, I didn't realize, like, there's this whole saga, and which is why, the movie did surprise me, and which is why I give it 2 over 1, because, like, there were things that I'm like, I never expected Oliver, the movie, to take this journey. Mm-hmm. And the ending was very intense and dramatic and climactic. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. I don't love what happens to Nancy. Ultimately, like, some of the songs were not necessary to me and a little too long. And none of the child actors convinced me to love child actors.
Oh
Sorry.
Still nobody has done that.
Yeah. We're on the hunt for it still. Okay, I know this is not the end of child actors. And yeah, Oliver, if there was going to be one musical to sort of turn me around on musicals, unfortunately, Oliver is not going to be that movie for me. What about you, Carly?
Yeah, when we had finished watching it, I said to you, I was like, I'm between a 3 and a 4, And I was like, wow, I really liked it. And I did. I very much enjoyed the film. Soon after we watched this, I had a 45-minute drive back to my house. And on the way home, I was like, that movie is not a 4, I was like, it's definitely a 3. I reflected on it. I was like, 1,000% it's a 3 movie. Strong 3. I think where I was getting caught up was I gave Wings a 3. And I'm like, I liked that threefold more than Wings. Like, I would watch Oliver again. I wouldn't watch Wings again. Yeah. And I could see, if you're not a fan of musicals, choreography, music in general, how there's long stretches of the movie where you're like you just want to get through it. I could totally see that, but I very much enjoyed the musical numbers. I enjoyed the choreography. I would be so interested now to see it on the stage, see what they do, how they do it.
You're right.
But I'm a strong 3. I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the character Nancy. I just enjoyed it. I am a big fan.
And I think you bring up a good point about sort of thinking about like Wings and whether or not, like, because you're giving both of them the same rating. But I think that is the difference between like us rating and us ranking. Yeah. Ranking is like specifically designed for us to compare these movies together, where like the rating is really just about the individual movie you watched outside of everything else. Like, so I think giving it a 3 doesn't say whether or not you liked it more or less than Wings. It's just like, this was out of 5, like that was your level of enjoyment for this movie. So I think that's entirely appropriate.
Above average. Yeah, I think it was above average. I very much enjoyed it. And yeah, I totally agree with you.
So let's talk about possibly where it ranks. And we won't get into too much of the nitty gritty of all the tier levels. You know, we've received some feedback from our listeners, and we're really going to try and simplify it and do our best to sort of describe for you, the listener, how we are sort of ranking these movies along the way. And with Oliver, it's quite easy because we only have one other film to compare it to, Wings. And so really it's about Carly and I both agreeing on whether or not this is better or worse than 1927 Wings.
Yeah, that's going to be hard for you to convince me that it's not better than Wings.
Yeah, let me... I want to talk it through, right? Like, let me like talk it out here. Because on theory, right, like Wings it's from 1927, right? And while we can appreciate and be impressed with the technical feat of Wings, it still was like this silent movie where we had to rely on sort of like cue cards, you know, with dialogue to tell us what was going on. And I think there's a reason why these silent movies they don't exist anymore, right? Like, we moved to this forum now where like we enjoy movies when we can hear the people speak and use their voices and things like that. So on that alone, I'm inclined to lean towards Oliver being the better movie. I still think Oliver does have flaws. And in some ways, I can be a little less impressed with Oliver because it is something that is adapted versus like Wings being more based on like a historic event and not necessarily like with a source material where all the characters are established. But then again, Oliver was not conceived as a musical. This movie made it work as a musical. Yeah. So there is some impressive feat there.
Well, I think because of your point, I think we need to look at common denominators, things that they both have, and how do we compare them. I think storyline, I think there was a lot more to Oliver as a story, personally. I think character development, characters in general, I think there were more meaty characters in Oliver.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, those I think are the big ones. And I think of, again, why are we looking at these movies? They won the Oscar. I do. I think this all around was a good film. And I get Wings did not have the resources that Oliver did. And I think we'll get into more war movies that did, which will be interesting too to compare. But and I don't know. And we've talked a lot about this ranking, and is it like, how much do we like it? How good of a movie is it? You know, etc. But I personally, thinking of it, and again, this is fluid. We can go back and be like, you know, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But I do think Oliver was better than Wings. And it's interesting too, because I gave it the same number of top hats or emojis. You gave Oliver fewer emojis. So where are you at?
It's a good question. You know, it's like, because there's so many different, it's really arbitrary, right? And we know this. But unfortunately, in that arbitrariness, there's so many different factors you could choose and pick and choose, and you may not be consistent when looking at every single film to be like, you know, but I agree. I think like both films featured an exciting female character who unfortunately, like, you know, Mary didn't really develop or didn't have many layers to her. She was very one-sided in Wings, where in Oliver, I thought Nancy was very nuanced. I just don't ultimately like that she has to be this like tragic hero at the end who is murdered.
Welcome to being a woman, Brad.
I know. I find it infuriating.
That we're not treated as we should be.
And Wings does have the gay kiss, which I appreciate, and the male nudity. There was no nudity in Oliver, which is probably
as a family film.
Yeah.
What is keeping Wings above Oliver for you? And why is it the gay kiss?
I just like heard what you I'm like so in my own head that I'm like, oh wait. Here's what you're seeing me struggling with, Carly. Because I think ultimately, I think I agree with you. I think I would put Oliver above Wings. I'm just trying to formulate and articulate like why that is. For either film, I don't really have a desire to rewatch either of these films. I'm impressed with them in different ways, but I definitely feel like Oliver as a story, it's more interesting to me. I'm not a big war guy anyways. And I think, you know, while certainly, you know, there are so many war movies out there, they hit a lot of the same beats and yet they're still so resonant every single time. I think like Oliver was like surprising in a way where like it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. And I like that. I like when a movie can subvert my expectations. If I remove all the songs out of it, I think like it plays as a very nice 80-minute movie. And I think these characters do pop and are more memorable than the Wings characters are. Ultimately, that is the advantage of not being a silent movie.
Yeah.
But I think Charles Dickens like did a good job with these characters. Like they stand out to me. You have opinions about them. Like I think Fagin not sort of recounting his ways and being a different person. I like that he stays the same. Like I like that because it just feels true to him and his character, and we know that because he's so well developed. And you know, Oliver, I would put it above Wings.
And I admittedly, I think if we got 2.5 hours of dialogue out of the characters in Wings, I'm sure we would feel more connected to them, root for them, know more about their backstory. But watching them and reading very little clips of dialogue from each of them for 2.5 hours just didn't do it. So it is, I think, a circumstance of the format of each film. But yeah, I don't think, and I know we're not going to go too deep into the tiers, but I could see them in the same tier with Oliver above Wings. But yeah,
I agree with that. I'm even willing to put Oliver in the tier above.
Oh my god, I love
just because they're both sort of like mid, right? Like I'm comfortable with that.
Me too. I'm glad we talked.
Finally, I'm glad we got that off our chest.
We talked about that.
So before we reveal episode 3, I do want to encourage our listeners to leave us a rating of yourselves, leave us a review. It'll help others, find the podcast potentially. So I just want to plug that. And for our episode 3, I think we're ready to reveal. Are you ready, Carly?
I'm ready, Brad.
Okay. Episode 3 is Platoon. Platoon! No exclamation point. This is the 1986 film Platoon. We're going back to war. Carly and I are enlisting again.
This time in a different, I think it's the Vietnam War this time, but we'll have to learn.
Yeah, we're ready to sign up for a new war. We're jumping forward in time again. We're leaving the late 60s and heading off into the late 80s. Not too far away from when Carly and I were born ourselves.
Wow. Speak for yourself.
So
hopefully they have a naked room in this one.
Yeah, I only wish there's male nudity in every war picture. But yes, so we will be diving deep into Platoon. Thank you so much for listening to us. And okay,
bye,
see
love
ya.
you.